Financial services for the poor, born and raised in Ethiopia. She worked with the Carter Center, Care and Habitat for Humanity International in economic development prior to joining the foundation. Joining her is Kate Lawyer, Associate Program Officer of the Foundation's Agricultural Development Country and Policy Team. In her role, Kate helps develop and manage investments in West Africa related to government systems strengthening and small grains and legumes. I'd also like to call Shelley Sandberg, Senior Program Officer on the Nutrition Team for the Gates Foundation in Seattle. She joined the foundation in 2008 and develops and manages a portfolio of grants which seek to improve nutrition in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. Shelley is not able to join us this afternoon, but she will be represented by the next colleague that I have the pleasure to call upon, Neil Watkins, Program Advocacy, Officer in the Global Policy and Advocacy Division at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He leads the foundation's policy and advocacy work on nutrition and coordinates the foundation's agricultural advocacy efforts with multilateral partners. And I would finally like to call Wule Makamanzi. Such a beautiful name. Please step forward. Wule Makamanzi, Senior Communications Officer Africa. Before joining the Gates Foundation in January 2015, she worked as the Deputy Director of the U.S. State Department's Africa Regional Media Hub. A round of applause to my panel. Chair sir, before I hand over, my sister Moki has assured me that we have some colleagues from the media who are here present. And we would like to meet them quickly in the interest of transparency and openness at our ground rule that says confidentiality of information shared. So they're here today in their role as partners, not exactly to write a story. And that's not to say you can't write a story, you just need to clear it with the persons first before you do so. Do we have the colleagues from the media in the room? Shall we meet you if you're here seated? Yes, please. Can you please, let me bring the mic over and you just tell us quickly your name and your organization.
Thank you. My name is Abdul Fattah Babatunde. I write for the News Agency of Nigeria, NAN, from Lagos.
I've got to find every colleague from the media.
My name is Ojebola Matthew. I write for the Punch newspaper.
I saw a hand here. Brilliant.
Ruby Leo, Daily Trust newspapers.
Thank you. My name is Nemna Ibe. I write for Premium Times Nigeria.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Ada Ezokori, and I am the Communications Manager for Nigeria Health Watch.
Many thanks indeed, and you're welcome. I have a final hand from the media. Why are you having to indicate the brothers? All right.
My name is Ibrahim Disina from Sunna TV.
You're all welcome. Thank you very much. Our session lead, sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Amina. Should I sit down or stand up? Well, I will stand up so that the panelists will know to stand up also, because I don't want to risk anybody falling asleep while we're in this. And we'll use pretty much the same approach we used for the first session, except that there will be much more time this time for back and forth. I recognize that the more people get to express their opinion and ask questions, the richer the discussions will be. So each of the presenters will have 15 minutes to talk. Some of them have presentations, and most of them have presentations. Neil is going to talk about both advocacy as well as the nutrition part, and they'll be back to back. But I'll start with Dilly to talk about our classic equity program, which is our financial services for the poor. That's our way of saying we are looking at those who are really excluded from this technological revolution that's happening in the financial space. Dilly.
Thank you, Ayo. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming back after lunch. I know I'll try not to make you fall asleep, but My name is Dilly Aberra, or Dilly for short, and I am here representing the Financial Services for the Poor program at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So as Ayo said, obviously even the word is in our title, but I'm going to try and walk you through some of what we believe and the guiding principles of the Financial Services for the Poor, and then talk about the work that we do in Nigeria, and as well as some of the current investments that we have and some that we're actually working on right now. So. Okay. Okay. All right. So at the Gates Foundation, and in particular the Financial Services for the Poor program, we believe that everyone benefits when everybody is included in the economy. Yet, however, some of you might know this data point, there are about 2 billion people that are actually excluded from the formal economy around the world. We are happy that because of the rapid rise in digital payments, as well as somebody mentioned here, I believe it's Robert, had a question about mobile technology. We believe because of these two things that we are able to make changes and actually address this inequality and bring the 2 billion people into the formal economy. So some of you might ask, and this has been asked before, why digital financial services? And this is sort of walks you through the story of what we do, why we do what we do. First of all, as most of you might know, it's expensive to actually be poor, which is an anomaly, but it actually is. Saving money is very difficult for poor people that most of the time have either seasonal income or fluctuations in their income, trying to survive on a daily basis. Credit is, if it's available, it's usually available at very high rates, and more often than not, any kind of financial shock, such as an illness or death in the family, usually pushes poor people further down into poverty, especially where they don't have access to perhaps savings accounts, insurance, and things like that. So research shows that even with people that have low income or have less income, they can see significant improvements in their lives if they have access to financial services such as savings accounts, loans, insurance, and so forth. However, even though this is the case and there's a potential to actually improve the lives of the poor, the marketplace continues to fail the poor and doesn't really serve the poor. A recent study that was released by the World Bank Global Findex survey showed that 80% of those people living below $2 a day actually are financially excluded. And this goes to many of the things that were mentioned before my presentation here. The people that are particularly affected are women, those that are illiterate, farmers, especially smallholder farmers, youth, and the rural population. So in Nigeria, we work with the EFINA, Enhancing Financial Innovation and Access, and they produce, which I encourage you to look at it, they produce every 2 years a survey results. They actually do these surveys, and their findings came out that this is also the group of people that are actually financially excluded in Nigeria as well. So why don't traditional financial institutions serve the poor? We did some studies. The Financial Services for the Poor program actually commissioned a study back in 2010 or 11, and found out that the economics of payment systems don't actually work for serving the poor, meaning the poor are not profitable. So most traditional financial institutions are brick and mortar, have lots of costs and things like that, and they cannot cover their costs of actually delivering financial services to poor people that often have high transaction volumes and are sort of saving very small amounts of money. So for many traditional institutions. So FSP focuses on digital, specifically because digital channels such as mobile technology are actually much cheaper. They provide providers of financial institutions to provide these services at cheaper costs. So they lower the transaction cost of delivering these services. So that is really the primary reason why we focus on digital financial services, because we feel that is the best method to actually reach the unreachable right now. So yes, so we can go to the next slide. So our objectives of the Financial Services for the Poor program is really based on three things. The first one is we work towards reducing the amount of time and the money that poor people spend to actually do conduct financial transactions. The second one is our aim is, and our objective is to actually increase poor people's capacity to weather financial shocks that we talked about earlier, such as a death or an illness in the family, and also capture income generating opportunities. The last one is our focus on making sure that we work towards generating an economy-wide efficiencies where everybody is digitally connected, large numbers of poor people to one another, governments, private sector, and so forth. So that sort of focuses on bulk payments and things like that. Our approach within Financial Services for the Poor program, we have about 4 initiatives that fall under these three different approaches. The first one is regulation and policy. So there we work with mostly central banks and ministries of finance to sort of create or adapt to the regulation within the different countries that we work in to enable widespread access and participation by poor people. Second one is we try to, this is more, second part is in countries that have more developed financial service industry, such as Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, where we try to enable an ecosystem of providers that will create value through products and services that meet the needs of the poor. So this is where the payments infrastructure is already there, and we're trying to increase the services that the poor can access. The third one is expand digital financial infrastructure, and this is the one that I focus on, and in particular here in Nigeria, which is where we're working with different partners to what we call the Level 1 project, which some of you might have heard us say the platform work before, but that's the name. And basically that is just strengthening the digital payments infrastructure within a country so that services and products can actually ride on those on that infrastructure. So a little bit about the Level 1 project. This is something that's new, that for those of you that perhaps were here, I wasn't here last year. If I'm not sure if there was a presentation on financial services for the poor, but this is a new thing that we're doing. It's not necessarily new, but the name is new, and so I wanted to make sure that I say a little bit about it. And I want to draw your attention to some materials that I put on the table that give you additional information. We actually have a website, the level1project.org, where you can find everything about what we're doing here and so forth. So going back to the guiding principle that an inclusive economy benefits everyone, we have this Level 1 project, which is our initiative to help level the playing field by working across public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And very important to note that this is building on existing infrastructure. It's not overhauling what's within different countries, but we're working on building infrastructure within the country. So for instance, in Nigeria, we're working with NIBS, the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System, and we're helping them to strengthen their infrastructure and so forth. And the goal is to help create inclusive, interconnected digital economies in every country around the world. So this is a global initiative, but the co-chairs, in particular, Bill Gates wanted us to actually choose 2 countries to have more work deeply, and Nigeria and Pakistan were the 2 countries that were selected. I'm not going to go very much into this, but this sort of is a visual of what we're trying to achieve. Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to move along. If you go to the website, you can get more information on this, because I want to talk about Nigeria and the work that we do. And this just shows the impact and you'll get the thing, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over this. This simply shows what is the impact of financial services in the lives of the poor. This is where we work, 4 countries in sub-Saharan Africa and 4 in South Asia. Nigeria. Okay. So, in Nigeria, I have my friend and colleague here, Joseph Atta here, who works at the Central Bank of Nigeria. And the North Star here for us is obviously what the government of Nigeria has a goal of 80% financial inclusion by 2020. So currently there's 48% financial inclusion, and about 30.5% are financially excluded. And those are people that have no bank accounts in Nigeria. This is coming from EFINA, who we partner with and we give grant to, and we've been partnering with them for many years. And so this is what we're working towards. And hopefully by 2020, we're going to reach that goal. So the question is, how do we get there? On January 26, 2015 of this year, the government of Nigeria, represented by the Central Bank of Nigeria, as well as the Federal Ministry of Finance, signed a letter of understanding to basically work on financial inclusion. And this was actually, it's a 3-year commitment between 2015 to 2017. And we're going to work together to strengthen the Nigeria digital payments system. How we're going to do this, there's going to be a steering committee consisting of these 3 entities, and we are going to develop a roadmap of activities that is part of the Level 1 project. This is just an illustration of the kind of projects that we plan to do in Nigeria, and it's by no means final. This is going to change once the steering committee gets together and decides what projects to actually work on. The ones that you see that are dark blue are projects that were previously prioritized by stakeholders back in 2013 and 2014. Just a few highlights. Under apps, you'll see that FSB, we believe, is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. So we hope to work in health, agriculture, education, health insurance, and so forth. Right now, just 2 more minutes. Current investments in Nigeria, as I mentioned, we work with EFINA. We also work through EFINA with the Financial Inclusion Secretariat of the Central Bank of Nigeria, and Robert here, Atta, is actually from there. We also have an investment with First Bank of Nigeria, where we're actually helping them to build out their agent network and their cash in, cash out network, and reach out into the rural and poor communities. And the last one is, I don't see Carlos, but he mentioned this before, but we're working with integrated delivery here in Nigeria to actually do a landscape analysis on digitizing community health worker payments. And that's been a very interesting project. And here are some potential investments that we're working on. These have not been finalized, so it's not official. But you can see that this is sort of coming out of the level 1 project and some of the discussions in country, working with NIBS, as I mentioned, putting a program management unit at the Financial Inclusion Secretariat, pension payment digitization with PTAD, or the Pension Transitional Arrangement Department, sustainable business models for delivering digital financial services to the unbanked poor. This, we're looking into the Lagos Business School to actually do that, and that also has a capacity building component. Final slide. Why is this important? And a lot of this has already been mentioned, but I just wanted to sort of link it up. And a lot of you here work in health and agriculture and so forth. So this, if you are working in any of these things, that's why we need to be working together. Why FSP matters and makes sense here. So the first one is with community health workers. And this, when community health workers don't get fully paid on time into their own accounts on a consistent basis, and don't have a nearby bank or mobile agent to actually go and cash their wages, then families suffer. You have poor households that are not able to cover basic necessities, food, health care, school fees, and so forth. And an example of this, I'm sure some of you have read some of the articles, was the Ebola healthcare workers in the 3 countries, and some of the disruption to healthcare delivery because they weren't getting paid. We have here in Nigeria, we're working with polio vaccinators and trying to understand the payment process and how to make sure that they get paid on time. So one of the preliminary findings here is with formal community health workers in Nigeria, we saw that 20 to 44% loss of time, work time, and traveling 6,200 kilometers to actually cash their wages was affecting about 3.4 million patients, the delivery of healthcare to 3.4 million patients. So this is significant. So what we're trying to do is, how can we reduce the distance that community health workers have to go to actually cash their wages, and increase productivity of healthcare or community health workers. Same goes for smallholder farmers, access to agricultural inputs and weather insurance and things like that can actually affect their income due to crop failure or crop yields and so forth. So these are the reasons. And the last one, of course, is leakages out of government funds and so forth. And if, bulk payments, digitizing bulk payments and government-to-person payments is another area of opportunity where FSB can actually help in the work that we do. So thank you very much.